President Trump takes a victory lap last night in Michigan at his first rally since the Mueller report. The president fired back and took aim at Democrats.
The special counsel completed its report and found no collusion and no obstruction. I could have told you that 2.5 years ago very easily. Total exoneration. Complete vindication. It's interesting. Robert Mueller was a god to the Democrats, was a god to them until he said there was no collusion. They don't like him so much right now. The Russia hoax proves more than ever that we need to finish exactly what we came here to do: drain the swamp. The Democrats have to now decide whether they will continue defrauding the public with ridiculous bullshit.
President Trump raw right there last night. Joining us right now, former presidential writer for President George W. Bush and American Majority CEO Ned Ryun. Good to see you, Ned. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Good to be with you, Maria.
So first, assess what we're looking at here. It was obviously a very good week for the president. You've got good economic numbers that he can boast, and he got the news from the Mueller report in terms of no collusion. Your reaction?
Yeah, no, this was one of the best weeks Trump has had in his presidency. Not only, exonerated on this collusion front. You had good report on the economy. I think he's done the right thing in regards, and there's been some discussion about whether he's doing the right thing in addressing Obamacare. I think his base is very encouraged by that. You even see some of the Michael Avenatti stuff. It's been a pretty good week for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I think what he needs to do, though, is realize he's got the wind at his back now. Removing this Russian collusion fairy tale cloud from over his head, I think, is going to empower him to be able to negotiate better trade deals with China and Europe. This is a huge issue, not only for just clearing him of this fairy tale, but really empowering him to be even more successful moving forward into 2020.
You make a really good point, because as he's negotiating with the rest of the world, you have these people in his face calling him treasonous,
right,
calling him, collusion, plain sight, like Adam Schiff, like John Brennan. I mean, so you make
right,
a point connecting the dots that it's probably not what you want to see when the president of the free world is trying to do deals with the rest of the world. You wrote an op-ed recently titled "The Mueller Dud," where you emphasize intelligence and law enforcement officials like Brennan and Clapper, Comey, Andrew McCabe. They abuse their power and they should be investigated.
Yeah, no, I think, Maria, I think it's deeply irresponsible. I see people writing opinion pieces saying we need to move on. People that are writing those things, I think, have basically decided they're giving up on the civil liberties of the American people. They're accepting the beginnings of a police state, and they're really saying that we should accept the demise of our republic. No, there needs to be a reckoning. There need to be consequences. These men, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, massively abused the great trust and power that they were given in how they targeted a candidate and then a sitting president of the United States. There need to be consequences. We need to say that this is unacceptable, not only for Republican presidents moving forward, but for Democratic presidents as well. There have to be consequences. And for there to be a healing in this process, there have to be investigations.
Yeah.
I think these people can be charged with crimes. To falsify FISA applications is a crime, and there need to be consequences for that.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Devin Nunes is coming out with his list of criminal referrals next week. For 2 years, I've been saying this is not about President Trump. This is about America,
right,
and it's about fairness. Kevin Kelly.
Yeah, Ned, I think you're bringing up a great point. There needs to be consequences for their actions, and there hasn't been, right? I mean, they gave Russia exactly what they wanted. They wanted to undermine our democracy. So that's the irony in the whole thing. But how do we actually get to those charges of crimes, right? I think you also mentioned we need to do a new iteration of the Church Committee. Is doing something like that going to actually lead to repercussions for their actions?
Well, first of all, I think that we need to get Brennan and Comey and all these guys under oath in an open setting on the Hill. I think there need to be the investigations, and I don't think we should be shy in actually charging them with crimes, and I think there should be jail time. There needs to be something so that people in the future will look back and go, this example, we're not going to do this again. Because the thing that the American people need to understand is our security regime, our law enforcement, our surveillance state is in many ways built on trust. It's built on an honor system. It's built on people that should be above reproach. And for these people to be partisan hacks and to use the awesome power that they were entrusted with to meddle with politics and policy is unconscionable. The reason I bring up the church committee is, again, we need to have a public setting and perhaps a committee chaired by, say, a John Ashcroft and a Joe Lieberman, in which the American people can fully understand what took place over the last 2 years, an abuse of the FISA process, an abuse inside of our DOJ and our FBI. And I have to tell you, I think we have to have massive reform at both the DOJ and the FBI.
Well, now it's up to William Barr, Lindsey Graham, IG, Michael Horowitz. President Trump is back on the cover of Time magazine. Instead of the illustrations of him drowning in the Oval Office like in the past, he's shown singing in the rain in this most recent cover on Time magazine, Dagan.
Do people in the media who push this collusion narrative and basically took a bunch of tidbits and spun this great lie that they told the American people, that you are what President Trump called you from day one on the campaign trail, and that he actually, by saying
fake news?
Yeah, but by him always on Twitter and in speeches saying fake news, lying media. I don't think he ever said that, but he essentially baited them into digging this hole deeper and deeper and deeper. You will never beat him in terms of it comes to messaging and understanding of the media. I swear.
And many of them were dying for it to be true. I mean, they just really wanted that narrative to be true.
Witch hunt, no collusion. He goaded you and baited you into basically digging a deeper hole for yourselves. Media.
Yep.
Why are you laughing? It's true.
It's
you
true.
know, James is laughing.
Yeah. Well, we're laughing because we know that it wasn't here. It wasn't here, and it wasn't in the Journal. We kept pointing out and calling it out. For the last year and a half.
And if there were facts that were reported, we would report those as well. But we didn't spin some tale out of these little crumbs into basically a lie that was pushed on the American people.
And I would think a lot of Americans have to be relieved that this is resolved, that as crazy as the charges sounded, now it has been resolved that there wasn't this collusion. I'm just wondering, Dagan was talking about messaging as a former White House communicator. Ned, what do you think the reelection message for Donald Trump should be?
Well, first of all, James, I don't think he should let go of this whole Mueller report. I think he needs to start driving this narrative again that there have to be consequences. At the same time, I think he needs to start really, again, I mean, he was mentioning it last night. He wants to run against the Green New Deal. He wants to run against the socialism that the Democratic Party is embracing. So it's got to be a blend. Again, people are saying, well, move on from the Mueller report. No. Don't move on from that. But focus on the positives. Again, there are a lot of things that are going really, really well for Trump. And the Democrats are playing right into his hands, James, coming into the 2020 election. There's going to be a very clear choice between capitalism and socialism, and he needs to highlight that.
Yeah, and there was all this other evidence of collusion on the other side that was never even looked at. I mean, Hillary Clinton paid for the dossier. It was coming from Russian sources who dug up this crazy, salacious dirt on Donald Trump.
Oh, but Jim Comey didn't know who paid for it.
Yeah,
he still doesn't. He only knows by reading that in the media. He doesn't know that Hillary Clinton paid for it.
Yeah, right. And
he doesn't know the DNC
Don't forget
paid
about the $148 million.
He doesn't even know how these investigations start.
You're the FBI director.
No idea.
No one believes you that you didn't know. You were the director of the FBI. And don't forget the $148 million that the Clinton Foundation got when she sold the quarter of the uranium stake. I mean, there's all this stuff that was in plain sight. Right? And then Bill Clinton gets $500,000 from Moscow. Ned, we can go on all day, and we appreciate you weighing in this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Ned Ryun there.